In the silent crevices of my perfectly mundane life, the last thing I expected was my world to crumble on a lazy Sunday afternoon. The sun was high, casting a warm glow through the sheer curtains of our living room, where I sat curled up with a book I'd been meaning to read for months. It was then that Alara, my sister-in-law, chose to shatter the peace. "I'm pregnant," she blurted out, the words hanging heavy between us. But it was what she said next that sent a cold shiver down my spine. "It's Declan's." I stared at her, the book in my lap now forgotten. Declan, my husband of 10 years, entangled in an affair? With Alara? It sounded like a twisted plot from a daytime soap opera, not something that could invade the reality of my unremarkable life. "Marissa, you have to understand," Alara continued, her voice laced with a desperation that did nothing to quell the rising storm within me. "This wasn't supposed to happen, but it did, and now we need to figure out what to do about it." "What to do about it?" I echoed, my voice hollow. The audacity of her demand was almost as shocking as the confession itself. She was not just asking me to step aside quietly, she was asking me to dismantle my life, our family, for a mistake they made. "I know how much this hurts you, but think about the child. Think about what's best for everyone involved," she pressed on, her hands clasped together as if in prayer. I stood up, the need to put physical distance between us overwhelming. "What's best for everyone? Or what's best for you, Alara?" She flinched at my words, but the manipulative glint in her eye didn't waver. "Declan and we have a chance to make things right for this baby. Don't you think it's only fair?" Fair. The word tasted bitter on my tongue. Nothing about this situation was fair. My marriage, my trust, my entire life was being bargained for without my consent. "I need to talk to Declan," I stated, cutting through her pleas. The resolve in my voice surprised even me. Alara nodded, her expression somber yet hopeful, as if she had already won. The confrontation with Declan was inevitable. I found him in his study, oblivious to the storm brewing just one room over. The moment our eyes met, I knew. The guilt was there, etched into the lines of his face, shadowing his gaze. "Alara told me," I said simply, watching as he struggled to compose himself. "Marissa, I can explain," he began, but the words sounded empty, rehearsed. "Explain what, Declan? That you've been having an affair with my brother's wife? That she's pregnant with your child?" The reality of the situation hit me all at once, a tidal wave of betrayal and pain. Declan's silence was all the confirmation I needed. The man I had built my life with, the father of my children, was a stranger. The floodgates opened, and with them, a torrent of emotions I couldn't contain. Anger, betrayal, heartbreak. In the days that followed, my home felt like a war zone, charged with tension and unspoken regrets. I pored over phone records, credit card statements, anything that could piece together the timeline of their deception. The evidence was damning, a mosaic of lies that painted a clear picture of their betrayal. The decision to confront Declan with an ultimatum came naturally. It was either him or me. But as I stood before him, the evidence laid bare, I realized that the choice was no longer his to make. It was mine. "I want a divorce," I declared, my voice steady despite the turmoil within. The words felt like a liberation, a reclaiming of the control that had been stripped from me. Declan's reaction was a mix of relief and despair, a man caught between the life he had and the one he wanted. But it was too late for regrets, too late for apologies. As I watched him grapple with the reality of our situation, I knew that this was just the beginning. My journey to secure my children's future and my independence was about to begin, and with it, a plan to ensure that Declan and Alara would not walk away from this unscathed. The stage was set, the players in position. My next moves would be calculated, each one designed to protect what was mine and exact a revenge that was long overdue. The days following my declaration felt like navigating through a fog of disbelief and betrayal. I moved with a purpose, though, driven by a need to uncover the full extent of Declan and Alara's treachery. It wasn't just about confirming my suspicions anymore. It was about gathering the ammunition I needed for the battle that lay ahead. My search led me to a trail of digital breadcrumbs, text messages that were too intimate, receipts for dinners I never attended, and photographs that burned images into my memory I wished to erase. Each discovery was a blow, yet I catalogued them with a detached efficiency. If Declan thought he could deny the affair, I would ensure the evidence spoke loudly enough for both of us. The confrontation was inevitable. I waited for Declan to return from work, the evidence laid out before me like a prosecutor preparing for trial. The moment he stepped through the door, he sensed the shift. The air was charged with a tension that made him pause, a brief flicker of fear crossing his face as he noticed the papers strewn across the table. "Marissa, what's this?" he asked, attempting to mask his nervousness with confusion. "It's proof, Declan, proof of your affair with Alara. Did you think you could keep this from me forever?" My voice was calm, belying the storm of emotions raging inside me. He tried to stammer out an excuse, to plead ignorance, but the evidence was undeniable. "It wasn't what it looks like," he finally managed, a feeble attempt to deflect guilt. "What it looks like is that you've been lying to me." "To us?" I corrected myself, thinking of our children who were blissfully unaware of the crumbling facade of their family. The conversation spiraled into an argument, Declan's defenses crumbling as I countered every denial with proof of his indiscretions. It was during this heated exchange that the vile nature of his betrayal fully revealed itself. "You don't understand, Marissa. Alara, she's different. She understands me in ways you never could," Declan spat out, the words slicing through me with their callousness. "Different? By seducing your brother's wife, you mean?" I retorted, my voice sharp with scorn. "Is that the understanding you're talking about?" Declan's silence was answer enough. The man I once loved, respected, and trusted had been eroded away, leaving a stranger in his place. A stranger who prioritized fleeting pleasure over the sanctity of his family, his marriage. As the reality of our situation settled between us, a cold resolve took root in my heart. This was more than just a betrayal. It was a declaration of war. Declan and Alara had conspired to dismantle my life, piece by piece, and in doing so they had unleashed a side of me they were wholly unprepared to confront. "I want you out of this house," I stated, the finality in my voice brooking no argument. Declan looked at me, perhaps for the first time seeing the determination in my gaze. He knew then that there was no going back, no words of contrition that could mend the chasm between us. As he packed his things, the weight of his choices evident in his every move, I felt a strange sense of liberation. With Declan gone, I could focus on what mattered most, protecting my children, and ensuring they would never have to face the fallout of their father's indiscretions. But as I watched the taillights of Declan's car disappear into the night, I knew that this was just the beginning. My plan for revenge was taking shape, a scheme that would ensure Declan and Alara paid dearly for their actions. They had underestimated me, believing I would crumble under the weight of their betrayal. They were wrong. I was just getting started. With Declan's departure, the house felt eerily silent, a stark reminder of the upheaval my life had undergone. But there was no time for reflection. I had a plan to execute, a future to secure for my children and myself. The first step was clear: confront Declan with the reality of our situation and the evidence of his betrayal, demanding a divorce on my terms. I arranged to meet Declan at a neutral location, a quiet cafe where our conversations could remain private. As I waited, I rehearsed my demands, each word sharpened by the pain of his betrayal. When Declan finally arrived, his demeanor was one of resignation, a man bracing himself for the storm he knew was coming. "Marissa, he began, but I cut him off. "No, Declan, you've done enough talking. It's my turn now," I said, my voice steady. "I want a divorce, and not just any divorce. I want full custody of our children, the house, and a settlement that will ensure we never have to rely on you for anything." Declan's face paled at my words, the gravity of my demands hitting him all at once. "Marissa, you can't be serious. I'm their father. You can't just cut me out of their lives. The moment you decided to betray our family, you made that choice, not me," I shot back, the bitterness of the truth evident in my tone. "I've gathered enough evidence of your affair to make sure the court sees it my way." Declan attempted to argue, to plead for a more favorable arrangement, but I was unyielding. The time for negotiation had passed. This was about securing my children's future. As the meeting progressed, Alara's name inevitably came up, her role in our marital breakdown a wound that refused to heal. "She's nothing to me now. It was a mistake," Declan claimed, his words hollow. "A mistake that you're going to pay for," I retorted, my resolve hardening. I'll ensure that your little affair costs you much more than you ever anticipated." The meeting ended with Declan agreeing to my terms, defeated by the evidence I held over him and the realization that there was no escaping the consequences of his actions. As I walked away, a part of me mourned the loss of the man I once loved, but a stronger part felt empowered. I had taken the first step in reclaiming my life, but it was far from over. The next phase of my plan involved exposing Declan and Alara's affair to those who mattered most. I started with my brother, Lucas, Alara's husband. The revelation was a blow, the betrayal by his wife and brother-in-law a double-edged sword that cut deep. Lucas's reaction was a mix of shock, anger, and heartbreak, emotions that mirrored my own when I first discovered the affair. "I can't believe she would do this," Lucas said, the pain evident in his voice. "And Declan?" "I trusted him. We both did," I replied, a shared sense of betrayal bonding us in our grief. "But we'll get through this, Lucas. We're stronger than their deceit." As the news of the affair and the impending divorce spread through our family and social circles, the backlash against Declan and Alara was swift. Friends and family members expressed their support for Lucas and me, while Declan and Alara found themselves increasingly isolated, their actions casting them as pariahs within our community. The public fallout was just beginning, but I took no joy in their ostracization. This was not about revenge for the sake of satisfaction. It was about justice, about ensuring that the consequences of their actions were felt fully and unequivocally. As I watched the pieces of my plan fall into place, I knew that the hardest parts were still to come. But I was ready to fight for my children, for my future, and for the justice we deserved. Declan and Alara's betrayal had ignited a fire within me, one that would not be extinguished until I had secured our victory. The aftermath of my meeting with Declan and the subsequent revelation to Lucas set off a chain reaction that seemed to engulf our entire family. The fallout was immediate and far-reaching, extending beyond the confines of our personal relationships and into the fabric of our shared lives. I had braced myself for a backlash, prepared for whispers and sideways glances, but nothing could have prepared me for the reality of watching my family unravel at the seams. Lucas, reeling from the betrayal, confronted Alara in a showdown that left no room for reconciliation. I heard about it from Lucas himself, who called me in a state of utter disbelief and pain. "She admitted everything," Lucas said, his voice a mixture of anger and sorrow. "I can't even look at her right now. How could she do this to our family?" His question hung in the air, a reflection of the incredulity we both felt. The betrayal by Alara and Declan had not just broken our marriages, it had torn apart the trust that was the foundation of our family. In the days that followed, the tension within the family escalated. Public revelations of the affair began to affect not just the personal, but also the professional. Declan, a well-known figure in our community, found his reputation tarnished as word of his infidelity spread. Clients and colleagues distanced themselves, and the impact on his career was palpable. Meanwhile, Alara faced her own set of consequences. Once a beloved member of our circle, she now found herself ostracized, her actions condemning her to a solitude she had not anticipated. The social ramifications of her choices were a bitter pill to swallow, and though I took no pleasure in her suffering, I couldn't help but feel a sense of poetic justice. As for me, the decision to inform our wider circle of friends and family was not made lightly. The knowledge of Declan and Alara's deceit had been a burden, one that I could no longer bear alone. The support I received in return was overwhelming, a testament to the strength of the bonds that still held, despite the fractures. One afternoon, I found myself sitting across from my mother, the matriarch of our family, as I recounted the events that had unfolded. Her reaction was one of stoic sadness, a mother's grief for the pain her children endured. "This family has seen its share of trials," she said, her voice steady despite the emotion I knew she felt. "But we've always emerged stronger. You are stronger than you know, Marissa." Her words were a balm, a reminder that even in the darkest of times there was a resilience within me, within all of us, that could not be broken. The days turned into weeks, and the initial shock of the affair began to give way to a new reality. Lucas, much like myself, was navigating the treacherous waters of divorce and betrayal, finding solace in the solidarity between us. Our conversations, once filled with despair, now carried a different tone, one of determination and hope. "We'll get through this, Marissa," Lucas said during one of our many late-night talks. "They may have broken our hearts, but they won't break our spirit." His words echoed my own thoughts, a shared resolve to rebuild from the ruins of our shattered lives. The path forward was fraught with challenges, but it was a path we would walk together as a family. As I lay in bed that night, the silence of the house a stark contrast to the turmoil of the past weeks, I realized that the fallout had only just begun. My plan for revenge was in motion, the initial stages set, to ensure that Declan and Alara faced the consequences of their actions. But there was more to be done, more to ensure that justice, in its truest form, would be served. The battle lines had been drawn, and as the dawn broke on a new day, I knew that the fight for my family's future, for my children's well-being, was only just beginning. As the dust began to settle on the initial shock and pain of betrayal, my focus shifted towards planning my next moves. The divorce proceedings were underway, a necessary step towards severing the ties that bound me to Declan, but my sights were set on a larger goal. I wasn't just looking to end my marriage. I was determined to ensure that my children and I would emerge from this ordeal unscathed, our futures secure. I pored over financial statements, legal documents, and any piece of evidence that could be leveraged in my favor. I had always been the one to manage our household's finances, a role that now gave me an unexpected advantage. I knew where every penny was, how it was spent, and more importantly, how to use this knowledge to my advantage. One evening, as I sat surrounded by piles of paperwork, a plan began to take shape in my mind. It was bold, potentially risky, but if executed correctly, it would guarantee a favorable outcome for the divorce settlement. The key lay in exposing the extent of Declan's deceit, not just his infidelity, but his financial indiscretions as well. I arranged a meeting with my lawyer, laying out the evidence I had gathered and outlining my strategy. "I want everything," I told him, my voice firm. "The house, full custody, and enough of a settlement to ensure that my children never have to worry about their future." My lawyer listened intently, occasionally nodding as I made my case. "It's ambitious," he admitted once I had finished, "but not impossible. You've done your homework, Marissa. This could work." Buoyed by his response, I left the meeting with a renewed sense of purpose. The next step was confronting Declan, not just as a wronged wife, but as a formidable opponent in our impending legal battle. The opportunity presented itself at a mediation session, a setting that felt sterile and impersonal, yet charged with the undercurrent of our shared history. Declan sat across from me, his expression one of resignation, perhaps even guilt, but I was past the point of caring for his remorse. "Declan," I began, my voice steady, "I know about the offshore accounts, the investments you made without my knowledge. I know about every financial skeleton in your closet." Declan's eyes widened, a flicker of panic passing over his features. "Marissa, Save it," I cut him off. "I'm not interested in your excuses. I'm here to tell you how this is going to go. You will agree to my terms, or I will ensure that every dirty little secret you're hiding comes to light." The threat hung in the air between us, heavy with the promise of exposure. Declan was cornered, and he knew it. The evidence I had against him was damning, enough to ruin him financially and professionally. "I'll agree to your terms," he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "You'll get what you want, Marissa. Just, please, keep this between us." I nodded, not out of sympathy, but as an acknowledgement of my victory. This wasn't just about securing a favorable divorce settlement, it was about sending a message. Declan and Alara had underestimated me, believing they could dismantle my life without consequence. They were wrong. As I walked out of the mediation session, a weight lifted from my shoulders. I had taken control of the narrative, turning the tables on Declan in a way he had never anticipated. But my plan didn't end with the divorce settlement. I had set the stage for a deeper revenge, one that would ensure Declan and Alara felt the full extent of their betrayal. The game was far from over. With the legal proceedings in my favor, I could now focus on the next phase of my plan. Declan and Alara had sown the seeds of their downfall, and I was determined to see that they reaped what they had sown. With the divorce settlement firmly in my favor, my thoughts turned towards the next stage of my plan. Declan and Alara had not only betrayed my trust, but had also upended the lives of those closest to me. It was time they faced the consequences of their actions, not just in the privacy of family circles or the confines of a courtroom, but in the full view of the public eye. The opportunity presented itself in a way that was almost too perfect. Declan, despite the scandal brewing beneath the surface, was set to receive a prestigious professional award, an accolade that, under normal circumstances, would have been a cause for celebration. Now, it was the perfect stage for his downfall. I reached out to a contact, someone I knew from Declan's professional circle, and arranged for an anonymous tip-off. The details of Declan's affair, along with evidence of his financial indiscretions, were leaked to the press, timed perfectly with the announcement of his award. The news broke on the eve of the ceremony, sending shockwaves through the community. Declan's once impeccable reputation was now marred by scandal, his professional achievements overshadowed by his personal failings. I watched from the shadows as Declan scrambled to contain the fallout, his desperate attempts to deny the allegations only serving to fan the flames of the scandal. Alara, too, found herself caught in the crossfire, her name dragged through the mud alongside Declan's. The backlash was swift and unforgiving. Declan's colleagues distanced themselves, his clients retracted their business, and the professional body that was to honor him retracted the award, citing ethical concerns. In a matter of days, Declan went from being a respected professional to a pariah in his own industry. But it wasn't just Declan's professional life that suffered. The public exposure brought renewed scrutiny to Alara's role in the affair. Her attempts to play the victim fell on deaf ears, her pleas for understanding and forgiveness met with scorn and contempt. I received a call from Lucas one evening, his voice laced with a mixture of satisfaction and disbelief. "I can't believe you did it," he said, a hint of admiration in his tone. "Declan and Alara are finished. Everyone knows what they did." "It's what they deserve," I replied, my voice devoid of sympathy. "They thought they could destroy our lives and walk away unscathed. They were wrong." Lucas was silent for a moment before responding. "What now?" he asked, the question hanging between us like a shadow. "Now we move on," I said, my resolve firm. "We rebuild our lives for ourselves and for our children. Declan and Alara are no longer a part of our future." As the days passed, the fallout from the scandal continued to unravel Declan and Alara's lives. Declan's attempts to find new employment were met with closed doors, his name now synonymous with betrayal and deceit. Alara, too, found herself isolated, her social circle shrinking, as friends and acquaintances distanced themselves from her toxic presence. The satisfaction I felt watching their downfall was tempered by the knowledge that this was but a hollow victory. The damage they had inflicted on our lives could not be undone by their suffering. Yet, in exposing their actions to the world, I had ensured that they could not harm anyone else in the same way they had harmed us. As I lay in bed one night, the silence of the house wrapping around me like a blanket, I realized that this chapter of my life was finally closed. The battle was over, and while the scars of their betrayal would always remain, I had emerged victorious. My children and I could now look towards the future, our paths free from the shadows of Declan and Alara's deceit. In the aftermath of the public scandal, the landscape of our lives had irrevocably shifted. The exposure of Declan and Alara's deceit had set off a domino effect, culminating in their professional and social downfall. Yet, the true climax of our saga unfolded at a family event, a setting that once promised joy and unity, but now served as the stage for final confrontations. The occasion was bittersweet, a celebration tainted by the undercurrents of tension and unresolved grievances. Family and friends gathered, their whispers and glances betraying the unease that permeated the air. Declan and Alara, defiant in the face of their ostracization, made their appearance, a move that was both bold and foolish. I watched from across the room as they navigated the crowd, their attempts at normalcy crumbling with each step. It wasn't long before Declan approached me, a mixture of defiance and desperation in his eyes. "Marissa, can we talk?" he asked, his voice low, almost pleading. I considered his request for a moment, the weight of everything he had put me through anchoring my resolve. "What's left to say, Declan?" I replied, my tone cool and detached. I know I've made mistakes, but I'm still their father, he said, glancing towards our children who were blissfully unaware of the drama unfolding around them. I want to make things right. Make things right? I echoed, incredulity lacing my words. You think after everything, you can just walk back into our lives? Declan faltered under my gaze, the reality of his situation finally dawning on him. Before I could say more, Alara joined us, her presence like oil to the flames of the tension between us. Marissa, please, she started, her voice tinged with a feigned sincerity that made my skin crawl. We all want what's best for the kids. The audacity of her words struck a nerve, igniting a fury within me. What's best for the kids? I snapped, turning to face her fully. Was it best for them when you decided to tear their family apart? When you chose to betray not just me, but your own husband? The confrontation drew the attention of those around us, the room falling into a hushed silence as the drama unfolded. Alara's face reddened, the shame and guilt finally registering in her eyes. Yet it was Declan who spoke next, his voice barely a whisper. I'm sorry, Marissa. I truly am, he said, but his apology felt empty, too little too late. The moment was charged with emotion, the culmination of months of pain and betrayal laid bare for all to see. It was then that I realized no words could undo the damage they had caused. Their selfishness and deceit had not only broken our marriage, but had also fractured the family at its core. I hope it was worth it, I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside me. Because you've lost everything that mattered. With that, I turned away from Declan and Alara, their apologies and excuses fading into the background. The confrontation had not brought the closure I had hoped for, but it had reaffirmed my decision to cut them out of my life completely. As the event came to a close, I found solace in the company of my children, their laughter a balm to the wounds that still ached. Lucas, too, was a pillar of support, his presence a reminder that not all ties had been severed. The journey through the fallout of Declan and Alara's betrayal had been long and fraught with pain. Yet, as I looked towards the future, I knew that the worst was behind us. We had emerged from the ordeal stronger, our bonds fortified against the trials we had faced. Declan and Alara's downfall was a testament to the consequences of their actions, a harsh lesson in the price of betrayal. As for me, I had reclaimed my life, my dignity intact, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead with a newfound strength and resilience. The chapters of turmoil and strife slowly began to close, giving way to a new beginning marked by healing and reconstruction. The aftermath of the confrontation at the family event had settled into a quiet resolve within me, a determination to move forward, not just for my sake but for my children's future. This final chapter wasn't about Declan or Alara, it was about us, me and my children, rebuilding from the ruins left in the wake of deceit. The transition wasn't instantaneous. There were days when the shadow of the past loomed large, threatening to overshadow our efforts to move on. Yet, it was during these moments that the strength of our family bond shone brightest. Lucas, ever the supportive brother, was a constant presence, his own journey of healing mirroring ours. One afternoon, as we gathered in my newly reclaimed home, Lucas and I watched our children play, their laughter a stark contrast to the somberness that had once permeated these walls. "You've done an incredible job, Marissa," Lucas said, his voice filled with admiration. "Look at them, so happy and unaffected by everything that's happened." I smiled, watching my children with a sense of pride and relief. It wasn't easy, but we made it through. We're stronger than we ever knew. Our conversation turned to the future, to plans and dreams that had been put on hold amidst the chaos. For the first time in a long time, there was a sense of optimism, a belief that the worst was indeed behind us. As the days turned into weeks and then months, the evidence of our healing became more apparent. The divorce settlement, once a source of contention, now served as a foundation for our new lives. The house, once a battleground of betrayal, had become a home again, filled with love and laughter. But it wasn't just the physical spaces that had transformed. I, too, had undergone a metamorphosis. The pain and betrayal had forged me into someone stronger, more resilient. I had faced my adversaries, fought for my family's future, and emerged victorious. The journey wasn't devoid of challenges, but each obstacle served as a reminder of how far we had come. The legal battles, the public scandal, the personal heartache, all were now mere footnotes in our story, of survival and triumph. One evening, as I tucked my children into bed, their faces serene in the soft glow of the nightlight, a profound sense of peace settled over me. This was what I had fought for, what I had endured the storm to protect. Our lives were not defined by the actions of Declan and Alara, but by our own resilience and the love that bound us together. As I sat down to pen the final entries in my journal, the words flowed freely, a testament to the journey we had undertaken. I wrote not of revenge or bitterness, but of forgiveness and growth. Declan and Alara, once central figures in our lives, had become distant memories, lessons learned on the path to finding ourselves. The story I penned was one of hope, of the strength found in the face of adversity, and of the unbreakable bond of family. It was a story of new beginnings, of doors opening where others had closed, and of the promise of a future filled with endless possibilities. As I closed my journal, the final chapter written, I knew that our story was far from over. It was just beginning, a narrative of resilience, love, and the unwavering spirit of a family that had weathered the storm and emerged not just intact but stronger than ever. The past, with its pain and betrayal, was behind us. Ahead lay a horizon bright with the promise of new days, new challenges, and new victories. We were ready to face them all, together as a family reborn in the aftermath of adversity, our spirits unbroken, our futures unwaveringly bright.